I came across an interesting story this morning on the Global News website. The Australian government announced YouTube will be among the social media platforms that must ensure account holders are at least 16 years old from December, reversing a position taken months ago on the popular video sharing service. YouTube was listed as an exemption in November last year when the Parliament passed the world first laws that will ban Australian children younger than 16 from platforms including Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and X. So, look, folks, I thought I'd throw this out there and see what you think of this. Do you think that this is a good idea to ban people or kids under the age of 16 from social media? Do you agree with this? Is this something that would be enforceable? And do you perhaps enforce this yourself now? What about your kids and their time spent on social media and their screen time in general? Because it's pretty evident at this point that these platforms are extremely, extremely, extremely addictive, very addictive. We know that. Not just for kids, for adults as well. Many of you listening right now, I'm sure, are scrolling social media as we speak. And it's just something that I think that societally we don't quite grasp, or we're letting this thing kind of spiral out of control at this point, in particular with our kids. And I have no expertise in this sphere whatsoever. I'm just like you, just like everybody else out there with an opinion. But I can observe things, folks, and I can observe how addictive social media is, and under that umbrella, of course, is TikTok and Snapchat, and these seem to be the platforms that, in particular, kids under 16 gravitate towards. But a lot of kids are on Facebook as well as Instagram, and it seems to me that there are a lot of potential pitfalls when it comes to social media and our youth in particular. We try and shield our youth from addictive substances like cigarettes and alcohol and other highly addictive things. Yet when it comes to social media, it seems to me that we're asleep at the switch. And perhaps it's just easier. It's just easier as a parent to let your kids just do it. Just to say, go ahead. Everybody else is on it. I can't do anything about it. Shrug your shoulders and just hope for the best. And also, of course, when the parents are on social media constantly, it's not a very good example, right? So what are your thoughts on the government getting involved, the Australian government getting involved to the degree to ban kids 16 years and age and younger from being on social media, including YouTube? Look, social media isn't all bad. I get it. It has its value. Of course, YouTube certainly has a lot of value. You can learn a lot on YouTube, a lot of instructional things. There's a lot of good things about social media. Gives people a platform, gives people a voice that would never have had a voice otherwise. Freedom of expression. It's not all bad, but my gosh, it seems to me that when it comes to deep fakes and AI-generated videos and echo chambers and the algorithms that are built into social media, that the pendulum is swinging to the side in which it is not a net positive at this point. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? And do you monitor your kids' social media? And do you limit your kids' social media? And how about you and social media in general? Have you limited social media? Have you perhaps deleted your social media pages? Or what, again, just a conversation in general about social media and how much overreach should the government have when it comes to regulating this type of thing. Also, I saw this story on the CTV website. As more companies bring employees back to the office, a new poll shows the majority of Canadians surveyed still favor working from home, and many are willing to push back if asked to return. The Angus Reid Institute survey published July 28th found that nearly 3 in 5 Canadians would prefer to work either fully remotely or mostly from home. That preference climbs to 76% among those with previous remote work experience. Just 9% of white-collar workers say they want to work in person in full time. So what has your experience been with all of this? Have you worked from home? And are you as productive working from home as you are at the office, or perhaps even more productive? Some people believe that feel as though they're more productive. Some would say that, look, there's a reason why people want to work from home, and part of it is because they slack off. Look, this is anecdotal, but we hear this, that people feel as though that when they're working from home, they can slack off, I suppose, harder to supervise. Is that a misnomer? Is that fair? And why would employers want people to be back in the office? There's got to be a reason why. And part of it, obviously, is probably monitoring and control. And should employees have the right not to be in the office? Should employees have the right to demand to not be in the office? And would you consider finding another job if, in fact, you were told that you would be required to be back in the office full time? And how about traffic congestion? Of course, this would be a potential part of the solution, I would think. Having fewer and fewer people on the roads going to work, commuting to work, this would lessen congestion on the road. And I think that would be a good thing. So the pluses and minuses of working from home, something else that you can talk about, or whatever else you want to get to, we'll open the phone lines between 11 and 12 today. Also later in the show, Steve Murphy will join me here in studio for half an hour from 10:30 to 11. So always enjoy Steve Murphy and the chats with him, and I've got a number of things on the list to get to with Steve. And it's the last Thursday of the month. That means it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, taking your pet-related questions between noon and 1. So look forward to hearing from many of you as well. At that time, I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness as well on the other side of the glass of the control boards, doing a fine job as always. All right, I received this release from Barb Harris, who organized a public information meetings on uranium development in her community recently. Citizens from affected communities respond to warning that from Association of Professional Geoscientists of Nova Scotia that individuals who are not registered geoscientists in Nova Scotia are presenting opinion and information to the public that may be misinforming or misleading to citizens, communities, and public institutions. Barb Harris joins me to talk about this. Barb, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Hi there, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. So, all right. So, tell us about this. I guess was it a letter that you received from this organization?
Well, no, I actually didn't receive a letter. Colby Soller, who also organized some community meetings, received a Facebook message from a person he didn't know, and it basically told him that he said that numerous individuals have been making, sharing, presenting, repeating public comments about natural resource development without the required training, experience, knowledge, or credentials to substantiate their positions and claims. Very, very broad message. Now, first, Colby thought this was a hoax, and then he did some more checking, couldn't find the guy's name. Then he found out that the person who sent him the message was the registrar and the CEO of this association called the Association of Professional Geoscientists of Nova Scotia. So it also included a copy of a warning notice from this association. And that's when I found out about it, is I went to the website of Geoscientists Nova Scotia and saw this very broad warning that said, beware of individuals making comments in public and online about natural resource development. That's the heading. So since I was making comments in public and online about natural resource development, particularly uranium, and the dangers that I felt it posed for my community, I live in River John. And River John was one of the 3 areas that the government decided after they repealed the ban on uranium, they decided that they were going to put 3 areas up for bid to encourage companies to come and explore for uranium. In my community, this site is a couple of kilometers from my house. It's a couple of kilometers from the Northumberland Strait, and it's in the middle of the River John watershed where people rely on wells for their water. We all rely on wells for our water in River John. So I had to get informed, and I found that this particular, we have organized several public meetings in the area, and people have in the area where Colby lives, down in East Dalhousie, in another of the areas. But I just found it very odd that this organization of geoscientists would be warning about people making comments online without any information. Said, well, we think that this is incorrect or that is incorrect. They didn't do that. They just basically said, you shouldn't be doing it. And there actually is something in their warning notice that talks about fines and jail terms for people who are anybody who leads anybody else to infer that they're a geoscientist. But of course, nobody at our meetings did that at all. In fact, one person made it very clear that he wasn't a registered geoscientist. So seems to me that this is, totally unnecessary, first of all. And why is this organization making such a big deal about people informing themselves? And these meetings that we've held, we've had people from Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, we've had First Nations chiefs, we've had retired geology professor, also retired Atlantic region specialist on radiation, who worked for Health Canada for many, many years. None of these people would fit into this narrow category that this association believes are the only people who should be allowed to considered to have an informed opinion. So it's a very odd thing, and the person can interpret it as they might. Then why? I won't put words in their mouth, but why are you doing this?
All right, so you speak for yourself and speculate, if you will. Why do you think they're doing it?
I think it's dangerous for me to speculate why they're doing it. I would say that it could certainly be considered an attempt to discourage discussion, an attempt to discourage people holding community information meetings with a broad range of expertise and opinion. I think other people can draw their own conclusions. I think the background for this is really important, is that we had a ban on uranium exploration and mining in this province for 44 years. And that ban was put into place in the 80s after a very broad public consultation process. And then it was reaffirmed in 2008 by another broad consultation process called the voluntary planning process, after which it turned from a moratorium into a ban. So there was lots of discussion, lots of scientific evidence. There were briefs presented by organizations like Environment Canada, and there were briefs from public citizens who were knowledgeable about the subject, and that ban was overturned without any public discussion and without any evaluation of what would be the impact on Nova Scotia. So when this organization, the Geoscientists, talked about informed discussion, there hasn't been informed discussion. The government talks about informed discussion, but when people ask to have it, they say, oh, we'll have that when there's a project. But meanwhile, they were opening up the province for the exploration, which itself can be harmful. And what is this attempt to put off or limit informed discussion on such an important subject for Nova Scotians? That is very troubling to me.
All right, so tell us about some of the people who have spoken outside of this of this group, I suppose, that they suggest that shouldn't be speaking. Who are we talking about here?
Well, there are several individuals from a group called the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. So their expertise would be the health impacts of uranium exploration and mining and the leftover ongoing impacts. When you disturb uranium, it's released from the rock that it's held in. And when uranium's disturbed, it becomes much more dangerous than when it's held in the rock. That's where we get, problems. And uranium is very easily dissolved in water. That's somebody told me the other day a little saying. It says, where water flows, uranium goes when it's disturbed. So the fact that these things are happening in our watersheds, is really a problem. People from CAPE, that's the acronym for Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, have spoken at a number of public meetings. They've written some letters to the Premier. They've produced some fact sheets. And that's what we say, like, this discussion isn't just about rocks. The geoscientists seem to think they're the only kind of expertise that's valuable. But this isn't just about rocks. It's about health impacts. It's about the impacts on water. It's about impacts on property values, whether people want to, are going to move to an area where there's uranium mining close by. It's not a big appeal, I don't think, for most people. So those are some people. The other people who've spoken out on this issue are First Nations chiefs and First Nations individuals. They don't want to see this happen in Nova Scotia. They've asked the government to consult with them, and the government's refused. So their voice is very important. They have a right to be consulted on these things. One of the people who's spoken at meetings is a woman who was a geology professor, I believe, at Acadia for many, many years. She's very knowledgeable about geology, but she's not a member of the Professional Association of Geoscientists. Is her voice not valid? I mean, it's so broad. Yeah, that's why really you have to, and me, I'm a concerned citizen. I've spent time learning about this. I spent time learning about it in 2008. My interest at that point was, I wasn't living in River John, and River John wasn't involved, but my interest was health impacts, and the evidence was very broad about that. There's a lot of evidence. Like, Nova Scotia is not the only place that has had a ban or a moratorium on uranium mining. British Columbia has one right now. Quebec has what you could call it's a de facto moratorium. It's not called a moratorium, but the way their mining laws, natural resource development laws are written, it's impossible to have it. Right. Greenland has it. Greenland had a ban. They took it off. Within 2 years, they put it back on again. Right. There's places to learn.
Right. Okay, Barb, we're out of time, yeah. but no, that's all right. Needless to say, you're not going to heed this warning, or this warning to not have comments, right? Obviously, this is not going to stop you from expressing your point of view here and holding public meetings.
Absolutely, and it would have stopped me from going on the radio and talking about it if I had taken this seriously.
Right.
But I'm not doing that, and I'm glad that you, as a member of the media, didn't take their warning to not allow me to come on and talk about it.
Absolutely not. Okay, Barb. Listen, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. Barb Harris organizes public information meeting on uranium. Interesting, and perhaps something that some of you might want to weigh in on when we open the phone lines. Between 11 and 12, why immigration is essential for Atlantic Canada's future. That when we come back. All right, Rhonda Tulk-Lane is the CEO of the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. Rhonda, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your participation as always.
Oh, good morning, Todd. Glad to be here.
All right, so I read your recent op-ed in the Chronicle Herald, the headline, Why Immigration is Essential for Atlantic Canada's Future. And immigration is a hot issue, obviously. It's polarizing, certainly, but according to what you're saying, the reasons why we've needed it have not gone away. As a matter of fact, they're getting more amplified all the time, right?
They definitely are, but you used the word. It is really polarizing right now. I'm even finding it outside of work when I'm with family and friends. It's such a heated debate and topic, so it's important that we keep talking about it.
Yeah, what are some misnomers do you think going on right now when it comes to immigration? What's some misinformation out there? What are your thoughts?
There's so much, and we always say, and we always promote from a chamber of commerce that we want governments to use evidence-based. And of course, we're not seeing this with the latest cuts that the feds did to immigration policy. But some of the misnomers are that it's cheap labor. That we bring newcomers here, whether it's someone coming through there's so many pathways, that these small businesses are getting a lot of support from local taxpayers' money. And that's just not the case. It actually costs a lot more to bring in talent from away. So that's a huge misnomer where people they're just not looking at evidence or to just hearsay. And I always ask people to prove it. So that's a big one that I hear all the time.
All right. So when it comes to people, like you said, working in visible places, like you say, I'll use Tim Hortons, for example.
Yeah.
I often hear people say, and I hear it repeatedly, that franchise owners get a subsidy of some sort to hire people who are new Canadians. Any validity or truth to that at all?
None. I'm going to shoot that down. There's no subsidy. So any subsidy that is out there, let's say it's a job subsidy, a wage grant, they're open to anybody. So locals, you're born and raised here, you now have your permanent residence. So normally those things, they're open to everyone, but we're not seeing anything special for immigrants. So as you said, we do see a lot of the fast food industry, that industry using newcomers and using pathways to immigration because they just can't find the talent. As I said, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of work to prove that you can't find someone local. So when I speak to small businesses and employers, they're actually going down, doing a lot of work to have those locals, those newcomers, work at our Tim Hortons or the fast food joints. It's not easy, but there's something also that's happening too, where we're finding there's a lot of young people in Nova Scotia in particular right now, and we refer to them as NEET. They're not in education or training, and they're unemployed. So we also need to dig into that to find out what's happening there, because our small businesses can't find the people. They just want talent. I don't think they are biased on the talent. They just want good talent.
Right, and of course, skilled workers are desperately needed, right, for whether it be construction or healthcare or whatever. Skilled trade workers is a massive void, right?
And this is another interesting topic as we dig into and talk about misinformation. As we look at the feds, of course, Prime Minister Carney looking at nation-building projects and big ones, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. We're rich. So this is going to be an interesting and hot topic as we look at the talent. And do we have enough as we look at these mega projects? Again, do we have enough people in the trades? Where are we going to get them from? What does that talent pipeline look like? So we've got some big conversations to start having. But I've noticed just around me the conversation when it comes to immigration has gone a little negative again and racist and a lot of hate there. So trying to make sure people have facts when they're speaking about this is really important right now.
What do you think the key reasons are? Why has it made that turn, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if it's scarcity or just a feeling of everything that's been going on lately in the world. And you and I have had many conversations about the trade war and what's happening. I think it's a global pressure, a global conversation that has trickled down. Because when I go to a rural, remote community in Nova Scotia or here in my home province, I'm up in Labrador, the locals are moving to these places to start a new life, to pay taxes, to raise their kids, and we want to embrace that. So I just think it's that scarcity and negativity that's hitting us all globally and trickling down, unfortunately. That's where I think it might be coming from.
What response did you get from your op-ed?
Actually, getting a really good response. We didn't think we'd get much here in the middle of summer, but there's a lot of people, a lot of small businesses reaching out that are, of course, members of the Chambers of Commerce in Nova Scotia, and saying, "I still need people, so please continue. Like, I can't find a local talent." So this is why I want to kind of dig into this new group I only learned about recently, about these almost like could be 10,000 youth between the ages of 20 and 24, local in Nova Scotia, not working, not participating. So what's happening there? Because as I said, our businesses are pro-talent. They're not biased. They just need talent. So we really need to look at all potential sources of a talent pipeline, and we got to figure this out if we're going to grow. And some conversations will be tough. We got to make sure we're basing it with evidence and not a lot of less emotion.
Right. Okay, Rhonda, appreciate it. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk again.
Okay, Todd. Take care.
All right, take care. Rhonda Tulk-Lane, CEO of the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. So we'll have a chat with Steve Murphy when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, joining me here in studio for a chat is Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, of course, friend of the show, and bringer of coffee. Hi, Steve.
That's a resume item now.
I know. I know. The coffee's not to be understated.
No, I know that. I think I've said this to you before, but when I used to sit behind a microphone like that every day, if somebody came in with a cup of coffee, they immediately went up in my esteem.
Exactly.
Much better guest. Much better guest. Absolutely. All right. So where to start? I think we'll start with the strong mayor power, because this is something that you've talked about on Murphy's Logic, of course, and it's what everybody's talking about in the city. So broad strokes thoughts on what's going on here. Well, I mean, you and Dan have been saying this, and the callers have been saying it. Don't be distracted by the bright, shiny object that is bike lanes, because although bike lanes are an issue and a legitimate issue, I think bike lanes are symbolic of the larger question of who's in charge, who's going to decide the future of the city, who's going to make the hard decisions. And at the moment, much of the discussion is centered on who's in charge of council. Is it the mayor, or is it a majority of council? The actual answer is the Premier of Nova Scotia is in charge. The legislature is in charge, because municipal government is a creature of the provincial legislature. The charter is created by statute law. So I guess the answer is that the Premier of Nova Scotia, who has a very strong mandate and is a very strong-willed individual, is going to make this decision. And I think it's pretty clear which way he is leaning. I think he is leaning toward a much stronger mayor. And let me say that when you have a stronger mayor, you have a weaker council. Mm-hmm. And that is the reason that I hear members of the council on here on Mondays and otherwise criticizing the decision that I think, if it's not already made, it's just about made. Yeah. So the question is, really, how should we reform government in the province, and including our municipal government? Because I've come to the conclusion, Todd, that really just realigning the power of the mayor over the council isn't really enough. Mm-hmm. I think we need a council that is more representative of the entire city. I said this on Murphy's Logic a while ago, and I've been saying it for quite a long time now. I would like to see more members of the regional council elected at large with a mandate to serve the entire municipality. I would also be comfortable with a smaller council. And I would be very comfortable if we are going to move to an Ontario-style situation where a minority of council can make a decision. I think it would be helpful if the council included a minority of members elected at large. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you've got members of council like Tony Mancini sat here on Monday. And,
I listened to that.
Yeah, and he was visibly, noticeably shaken, I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And I must say, and you and I have gotten into this before, I don't like it when politics gets to the personal level in the way I hear it becoming very personal. Yeah. And I know that people are passionate about these things, and properly so. These are important things. It's important, I think, and valuable to be passionate. But it isn't, I don't think, in the interest of public discourse. It's certainly not in the interest of community spiritedness, if you will, to attack people personally and accuse them of motives of not caring or not paying attention. Mm-hmm. Maybe some people don't care, but it's a serious thing when you accuse someone of not caring. Yeah. I've known many people in political life, as you have. I think most of them do care.
Yeah.
Most of them do care.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's caring and then it's competency, right?
Of course.
And caring and being open to not being blinded by ideology and predetermined, and the way things have always been, right? Change is tough, and you mentioned that, like a strengthened mayor is going to inherently mean a weakened council.
Of course.
And that impacts Tony Mancini, impacts every member of council. So do you think that that's at play as well, a bit of a fear of a loss of power, perhaps?
I would expect that if maybe it's not a fear of the loss of power so much as the recognition that the role of the councillor could be much different.
Yeah.
What we have at the moment are 16 people who represent 16 districts. They try to come together, in consensus on important issues and so on. And there's a good deal of power when you are the only councillor for a district, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. And I think that we should have district representation. But I will repeat my point from a moment ago. I think we would be well served to have a council of about 12 with 8 district councillors, 4 councillors elected at large, and a mayor elected at large. And that way, if the council is going to make an Ontario-style decision where less than a majority is required to pass bylaws and so on, policy changes, that could be the 4 plus the mayor. That would be 5. That would be 5 of 12, but that would be the 5 elected at large. Now, again, some will argue, and I can hear this, and I'm prepared to entertain it. Murphy, you're sounding as though you're in favor of something that's not essentially democratic. I think that this is a different kind of democracy. I think people elected at large have a different mandate than those who are elected by districts, which is why Andy Fillmore, says, I propose these things to the people. They voted for me. I, among many others, in moderating mayoralty debates in the last campaign, pointed out to the mayor that the mayor has no power to do any of that, that the mayor has a bully pulpit, but he doesn't have power. So what the mayor now wants, in the interest of pursuing his agenda, which was supported by a plurality of those who voted, is the power to do what he said he was going to do.
But he didn't campaign on that, right? He
didn't campaign on strong mayor powers.
Right.
No, and this is the other point, and with due respect to the Premier and the Mayor, we had an election municipally less than a year ago. We had an election provincially less than a year ago. Those people could have presented this idea of stronger mayor powers as part of a platform for the provincial election or the municipal election, or ideally both. I've heard some in the front benches of the Houston cabinet saying, well, it wasn't a pressing issue at the time. With all due respect, I am told, it has been reported publicly, that Mike Savage's mayor was offered strong mayor powers, or at least it was raised with Mayor Savage. If that is the case, then clearly the provincial government, Premier Houston's government, has been thinking about this for more than a few minutes.
Right. All right. So what about the opining or the waxing sentimental about the old Mike Savage days and how Mike knew how to get things done and was a strong mayor and didn't need strong mayor powers, because that is the claim. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that Mike Savage was a consensus builder. He also had allies on council. He also had the benefit, frankly, of having been mayor of the city for quite a long time, mayor of the municipality. Yeah. We don't have a city here. I know, right. I know Gloria McCluskey calls us out on that, and she's right. This is not a city. This is a municipal corporation, municipal government. No, he had many, many years in office to build consensus, and he also saw changes on council and had opportunities to build alliances and so on. Mr. Fillmore has been in this job for a few months, and many of the members of council have been there for much longer. So there are some baked-in alliances. Mm-hmm. There were former members of council. I think Councillor Mason had a certain amount of influence when he was on council. He ran for mayor and was not successful, but some members of his alliance, if you can call them that, are still on the council. They are still pursuing some of the items from their agenda. So yes, I think Mike Savage did a pretty good job as a consensus-building mayor. And when he was offered, as he apparently was, and he's never confirmed this that I know publicly, that anyone said, Mike, you can have the power if you want it, maybe he felt he didn't need it. But the point is, at the current stage, we have a high degree, I don't like to call it dysfunction, but boy, it's not very smooth down there right at the moment. Yeah. The amount of fire back and forth among members of council and the mayor is quite distressing.
And perhaps that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? No. I don't think abrasion is necessarily a bad thing in politics.
No, I don't either. But I tell you what I do think is a bad thing in politics, and that is that individuals making decisions of this kind, I think the public needs to be consulted about whether we want to restructure our municipal government, and if so, how. And it could have been done in the provincial election campaign. It could have been done in the municipal election campaign. It could be done by plebiscite, and yes, it would cost money to do that. And I don't like to waste public money. By the same token, when you're making a profound change in the way we govern ourselves, it is worth considering whether the people should be consulted. Do people want this change? And I would reiterate, I don't think just installing a strong mayor is an adequate solution to what I see as the structural problems of our municipal government.
Okay, but look, it seems to me, again, like you said, this has been brewing quite a long time, and it was not mentioned during the campaign. So is this kind of a backdoor approach to this?
Well, certainly sounds like a backroom approach to it, because I don't think this idea has just suddenly sprouted like the mushrooms on the back lawn.
Yeah.
You know, I think this idea has been around for quite some time. It's been considered, I think, previously. And I've never had any opportunity to discuss this with the premier, but I have a sense that a strong premier probably supports the notion of a strong mayor. Mm-hmm. The premier has certainly indicated that he is willing to intervene in municipal affairs. With Morris Street being the latest example, but for the development changes and so on. And he has the authority to do so.
Yeah.
That's the other point.
Yeah.
This is already baked in. If the province wants this, mm-hmm. we are going to get it. Mm-hmm. My question is, should the province at least go through the motions of consulting the people before imposing it? The premier has the power. Yeah. I don't quarrel with that. But does he have the moral authority to do so?
Okay.
If he were sitting here, and again, I'd be prepared to, ask him.
Yeah.
But he may feel he doesn't need any further moral authority, having won a supermajority in the legislature that doesn't include a lot of members of the legislature from the Halifax region.
So at this point, the vehicle would be a plebiscite.
Well, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
Because an election ain't happening.
No, and we know there won't be elections. Well, there could be a provincial election in less than 3 years. We know that.
Yeah.
The premier's demonstrated a willingness to go before 4.
Sure.
But no, there won't be municipal elections for another three years. I don't know if we want to wait that long.
Yeah. All right. So how much of a relationship or how fractured do you think things are at City Hall when it comes to the dynamic between council and the mayor?
It seems pretty factionalized to me.
Yeah.
I think there are emerging factions on council. Some of the former some members of the former council, I think, are still allies and are still pursuing agenda items from the previous administration. Mm-hmm. But it looks pretty divisive down there. But I want to make another point, and that is I heard members of council criticize the mayor for not showing leadership. Implying, I guess, that the Savage model is the only model,
right,
which is where you build consensus, and that is leadership. Mm-hmm. But Mayor Fillmore also has to display leadership for the municipality. He is not just the leader of the council. He is the leader of the municipality, mm-hmm, the entire municipality, by virtue of popular vote.
Yeah. Okay, so the brand itself, Tony Mancini mentioned here on Monday that he fears that the brand of HRM Council is being damaged here. Do you think that is over the top, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
does it matter? Does the brand matter?
The reputation of the council? Well, the reputation of politicians is down there with the reputation of people like you and me, journalists, and I don't know whether talk radio hosts are included in that. I dare say your numbers are probably better than mine or theirs. But the whole point, I guess, is that sure, they're taking a reputational hit, but this is an important issue, and it isn't a question of bike lanes or traffic amelioration of problems in traffic and so on. This is a question of how we govern ourselves. I think it is an important issue. So it's worth having a robust debate that ideally doesn't become hyper-personalized, which I'm starting to hear it, and mm-hmm, I don't think that helps.
Yeah. It doesn't help, but it's entertaining, right?
Well,
I mean, sadly, it is entertainment to some degree, right?
Well, yeah, so is wrestling.
Yeah.
So is Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
I mean, yes, of course, there is an entertainment aspect to it, but it's an important issue, though, Todd.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we'll be right back with Steve Murphy.
Facts.
All right, continuing our chat with Steve Murphy here in studio. Steve Murphy, Wind West. What are your thoughts? Is this pie in the sky? Is this something that can come to become a reality? What are your thoughts on
well,
this?
Well, I mean,
ambition?
all these things, look, it's a big dream, but, big projects often begin with big dreams. I think, that the Premier needs to be given some runway on this. Clearly, we have in the federal government a prime minister who says he's willing to look at important and large national projects. Mm-hmm. We've got wind here. There's no question about that. One of the windiest places in the world, I think. Yeah. And I think that if we have the opportunity to cash in on some federal sponsorship, and particularly if we can, obviously we need robust private sector involvement as well. But sure, we should take a look at these ideas for sure. Is it a pipe dream? I hope it isn't. I hope that it actually comes to fruition. Yeah. But it'll be a while. Yeah, it'll be a while. I was here, of course, when John Buchanan said that the offshore was going to solve our problems. He was talking about petroleum, but this is offshore. Yeah, this is offshore energy, too.
All right. And when it comes to the economy and the woes of Nova Scotia, is there a silver bullet? Is there natural resources? Is that potentially the answer out of this fiscal hole that we're in?
I don't think there's a silver bullet to anything at the moment. Obviously, I think we've got to use all of the tools in the toolbox, to use a well-worn cliche. I think we need, and you and I have talked about this before, we need to consider what resource exploitation can be conducted in a responsible fashion, at what price and at what profit, because it does need to be a balance between the cost of doing it and the benefit to the taxpayer. But I also think that we're living in a country, Todd, where we have certain expectations of the country, and the country's entitled to have certain expectations of us. And one of the things that Canada is entitled to expect of us is that we carry our load to the full extent that we can. And there have been some really good green shoots in recent years. Population growth has been a good thing. It hasn't been without problems that come with growth. Your previous guest, I think, made an eloquent case for why we need to be very mindful in the way we manage immigration, because population growth has produced good results for Nova Scotia, in addition to housing problems and the doctor shortage and other things to which immigration and population growth have contributed. But we do need to keep growing, and our opportunities for growth are somewhat limited by geography and population. So sure, we have to take a look at everything that's out there and see what can be done at a reasonable cost with hopefully a reasonable benefit.
Yeah, do you have concerns? Obviously, I'm sure you have concerns. What are your thoughts on affordability and people's ability to live the dream, I guess, the Canadian dream, whatever terminology we want to use to be able to purchase a house and raise a family and all that stuff that you and I had that opportunity to do so.
Well, look, I did a piece on Murphy's Logic a few weeks ago talking about how we, and I guess I can include you in this, although you're not a boomer.
Almost.
But you're almost.
Yeah.
I think we need to listen to younger people. And I'm an old man. I'm a senior citizen. I'm a boomer. I'm all those negative things now. And I don't like those terms, but I don't deny the reality that my view of the world is pretty baked in. Mm-hmm. We've got a whole generation of people, a couple of generations coming in, who are having a hell of a hard time doing all of the things that people like you and certainly me and my cohort took for granted. We didn't wonder whether we'd get a house. We wondered when. We didn't wonder whether we'd get a full-time job. We wondered when. We didn't wonder whether we'd get benefits, health care, pensions. We didn't wonder if. We wondered when. Mm-hmm. We've got an entire generation, 2 generations of younger people who can't count on any of that. So we've got to listen to their concerns. I think we've got to really respect the frustration that they are experiencing, and I think we need to find better ways to be, frankly, more sympathetic, because we need them to succeed. We need them to succeed.
Okay, so do we have politicians listening? And Mark Carney is, of course, a boomer, and Tim Houston is of that vintage, I would assume, as well. I'm not sure of his exact age.
I don't know if Carney's technically. I think he's 60.
Carney, I believe, 61 or 60.
Is he? Okay.
Something like
well,
that,
he's boomerish.
That's right.
Well, look, when you look at the results of the last federal election, people in the older cohorts were more likely to vote for the Liberal Party than any other group. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously the vote of a 65-year-old guy like me is the same as the vote of a 22-year-old person like you. No, of any 18-year-old voter in the country. And all votes are equal. But I think we need to remember that I think the present government enjoyed a good deal of support from older voters who are conservative, small c conservative perhaps by nature, and were less willing to make the kind of changes that some younger people want to see. There is a feeling, and I've heard this from younger people, articulate young people, that the boomers, the old people, we take what we've got for granted. And we can argue, well, look, we paid into the system, we invested, we did all of this in good faith, and now we're trying to reap the benefits of that. Fair enough. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to try to enable the people who are coming in behind us. We need them to succeed. Yeah. We need them to succeed. Right. We need to listen.
Do you think that the voting age could be dropped? Of course, this gets floated once in a while. Recently, an independent senator floated the idea of dropping it to 16.
The UK is looking at lowering the voting age to 16. They already have it in Scotland.
It's done it, yeah.
I would favor lowering the voting age for any student in Nova Scotia who completes a credit course in civics in high school. So either at grade, perhaps even as low as grade 9, grade 10, offer a mandatory civics course, and if you pass it, then you get the vote at 16. I don't know that I would generally expand the voting age until we take serious steps to better educate people about the way government works. And I mean, understanding the difference between municipal, provincial, and federal, that's the beginning. But we need to understand the way democracy works, the way Parliament works, the way the Constitution works, the Charter of Rights works. And, you can get through public school now without getting an awful lot of that kind of education. Yeah. So, I would say, let's find a way to enable 16-year-olds to get the vote by getting some good quality education. Excellent. And you've got a nice trip coming up. You're going away for a little while. Yes. Well, I'll be taking it. Listen, how lucky are we this season that we've got so many direct flights to Europe from here? So my advice is use them or lose them. The airlines are displaying some confidence in the marketplace. So, and it's a wonderful time not to go to the United States, a country, by the way, that I've always enjoyed, and I've traveled there widely. Yeah. And I still like Americans, but I'm not going there. Yeah. I think a lot of people are in the same category. Well, we'll have you in when you get back, Steve. Always a great pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. Yeah. Happy summer, Todd. Thanks very much. Great to talk to you and all of your legion. All right. Steve Murphy is CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, and, of course, friend of the show. Your calls when we come back. Facts. All right, taking your calls when it reaches is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Perhaps some things that you've heard Steve and I chat about in the previous segment, 902-405-6000, or whatever else you've got in your mind. A couple of things that I caught my attention today. The Australian government announced YouTube will be among the social media platforms that must ensure account holders are at least 16 years of age from December, reversing a position taken months ago on the popular video sharing service. Again, in the Australian government made the announcement. YouTube was listed as an exemption in November last year when the Parliament passed world-first laws that will ban Australian children younger than 16 from platforms including Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and X. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Do you agree with this move? Is social media too addictive for young people? Is it too risky to have for young people's developing minds? And I would suggest that based on nothing more than just my own observations and nothing beyond that, that in the hands of young people, extremely, extremely addictive, and I think creates all types of challenges and issues for the developing mind. And I would say that it's addictive for everybody, obviously, but in particular young people. So I would support this, but not everybody would agree. Obviously, some people feel that the government has enough say over our lives. And how difficult would it be to monitor it? I suppose that's the other challenge as well, right? Do you agree with this move? Do you think that social media is too addictive for young people? And do you limit your kids' time on social media? Is it just too much of a battle to do so? Perhaps for many of you out there, you just say, look, I just can't be bothered trying to monitor it. All my kids' friends are on social media. They're all using it. They use it to organize things, to communicate with other people and friends and family and all of that. So you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, what the heck? And just roll the dice. Or have you taken a proactive approach to limit kids' time on screens and social media in general? And how much do you rely on social media in your own life when it comes to your information that you get?
And how much should we rely on anything that is designed, again, to suck us in? It's addictive, deep fakes, AI, echo chambers, algorithms, for all those reasons, I would say that it is harmful. But is it a net positive or a net loss? That or whatever else you've got in your mind. 902-405-6000. You can get into whatever you'd like. David's giving us a call. Hello, David.
Hi, Todd. Yeah, I just want to follow up on Steve Murphy there. Always a pleasure to hear him on the radio. He's such a profound and articulate thinker, and just whether you agree with him or not, he has a lot to add to any debate. In this case, I happen to agree with him on the reformation of municipal governments. I think it's actually a good thing that we should look at reforming our municipal governments, but we need to do it in a way that will actually improve things rather than just sort of Tim Houston deciding what's best and going with it and just seeing how it happens. I've interacted with both staff and councillors, the HRM staff and counselors, sort of on a detailed policy level, and both are equally guilty of what the kids would call ghosting you, when it suits their needs, or sort of not really engaging in a sort of substantive way. So I think increasing the power of one at the expense of the other won't necessarily improve things. So I think we just need to think through it carefully and do this properly. I really like his idea of electing 4 councillors at large. I think that would be sort of an interesting way of doing things and, quite different. But I also think maybe at the municipal level, something like that, those 4 councillors at large could be elected using some sort of proportional representation system. Myself, I'm not actually a fan of PR at the sort of provincial or federal levels. The reason is I think it just would sort of entrench political parties, and I kind of see political parties as part of our problem. I think we really need more independence at that level, but I think at maybe the local level to have a sort of plethora of local parties not affiliated with a sort of, large provincial national parties might actually be a good thing, as a means of people organizing, sharing resources, developing ideas and stuff like this, hopefully to just inject a little more sort of thought and substance into some of these debates. So, I think there's a lot, we can do to improve things, but let's just look at it and, in a thoughtful way, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, David, appreciate your time. Thanks for the call.
Right on. Thanks, Todd.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Matthew, hello.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing.
I've been listening to the discourse about the bike lanes over the past week or two, and I just wanted to provide a perspective that I feel like I haven't heard yet. And I just want to start with a quote that says, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they'll never sit in." So I feel like a lot of the people that called in about the bike lanes, they seem to think that nobody wants bike lanes constructed. And I just would like those people to understand, if, the main place that you're consuming media or hearing opinions are on the radio and Facebook, you're just hearing the opinions of a certain demographic of people. Like young people, they don't listen to the radio usually, and they're not really on Facebook. And like our counselors are not planning for the Halifax of 10 years ago, and they're not really planning for the Halifax of today, but they're planning for the Halifax of the future. And numbers say that Gen Zers they're less likely to have a driver's license. So in the U.S. in the 1980s, nearly 50% of 16-year-olds has a driver's license. Now in 2021, that number's down to about a quarter of 16-year-olds. And just look at the price of like a new Honda Civic. That it used to be a budget car. Now it costs you nearly $40,000 today, right? So young people just cannot afford that. Mm-hmm. And if they are, they're stretching themselves, taking on a crazy amount of debt at a crazy interest rate on a depreciating asset. So it's just a bad financial move if they are. So like the talk of immigration and retaining young people in our city. Yeah. Just if the idea of bike lanes in general makes you angry because it's a sign of change, let me just ask you, have some grace and consider planting a tree whose shade that you will never sit in. Maybe you will never use the bike lanes, but just consider how much it will help future generations and younger people today who may not drive or may not be able to afford to drive.
Yeah, Matthew, the arguments that and you've heard them regularly, and I appreciate the call, I really do, and I appreciate your input, and I think you make some sense. But there are some fundamental legitimate concerns, I think, when it comes to cost, and I get that again, to your point, you're planning for the future and not today, and cost isn't the be all and end all. But when you get a price tag that goes from 25 million or whatever it's been to 100 million now, and God knows where that ends up, and some pretty fundamental changes to streets like Morris Street, which is a very important artery in the city for the port and for the hospital and for other reasons why. I think those type of changes are, I think people have a legitimate issue to at least raise concerns about. Do they not?
For sure, and I think I actually kind of agree with most of the grievances about the Moore Street bike lanes, and I get the cost escalations too. But if you were planning to put that on hold today, are we expecting, if we pick it up, do tenders next year, and then some of these bike lanes are not built for another 5 years, do we expect the cost to go down by then? Because surely the ballooning cost is somewhat due to all the inflation we've had over the last few years, and we know that that's going to continue. Maybe not to the same degree, but the costs aren't going to go down.
Yeah, I think, Matthew, look, here's the challenge that we have, or we got lots of challenges, but one of the big challenges we have is the sprawl in HRM and all 16 districts, because I think there's a good argument to be made that probably not a lot of people are going to be biking in from Lower Sackville or Cole Harbour or some of these areas in the Eastern Shore and all these districts and taxpayers are going to be helping pay for all of this. And I think if I'm in those areas, I think it's cause for concern that perhaps and I understand in a municipality we share costs and as a province and as a country, we all have services that we all pay for that we don't all need all the time, which is great. That's the way it works. But I think that when people have concerns, often they don't see the value for their region or for their district and don't foresee it in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I respect we're a pretty diverse municipality, right? And so we'll have diverse opinions, I guess. But I understand that.
Okay, Matthew, appreciate your call. Thanks for the comments.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Are we perhaps viewing this from the wrong lens? Are we not being open-minded enough? Are we not being proactive or progressive enough when it comes to the issue of bike lanes? 902-405-6000. That or whatever else you've got in your mind. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Ross is giving us a call. Hello, Ross.
Hey, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. Just to touch on your last call, it was nice to hear a younger perspective and a younger take because, I think he's right, and we don't hear a lot of their takes on the station sometimes. But, I do appreciate the input from a younger crowd. But, I'm closer to your age, so I kind of think we have the same values and sights on the bike lanes. And I think the problem, one of the problems is, the doubling down. The city doesn't, there's no input. It's all right, you can try something. If it doesn't work, they can retract it. They can listen to the feedback. I haven't seen a lot of these bike lanes kind of dismantled when they don't actually get usage. And I bike to work sometimes. And, there's some routes that work really well. Some that you see very low usership. And, just to touch on Morris Street, I work at the port. So that is a very vital area. And from what I understand, that's for me, is the way I go home is I go up Morris Street because it's a very slow grade and it's very easy to bike as opposed to Duke, Sackville, George, all the ones that are very steep.
Sure.
Devonshire even, because I've never seen anyone bike up Devonshire. So if they do some input to kind of make changes, but because one thing I often do too is I'll take the side streets because do you think I want to bike down Bella Road where I got those flaps on the road, trees are literally within inches of your face when you're biking down that lane. And, it's it's a high risk bike route. I mean, it's the one that makes the most sense. But I mean, I guess it's just my frustration is that there's the doubling down. There's no, let's try this, see if it works, try it back. I know that could be a waste of money, but it's like sometimes that's how you get the result you need and you want, instead of just keep throwing these barriers and these flaps up on the road and really creating more congestion. Because like, yeah, like to the last caller, like I'd love if this somehow in the future, 10, 20, 30 years, we don't have cars. But if this city's going to keep growing, and the way Halifax was laid out in 1749, there's going to be commuters. And I don't see a way around that. If you know, like, it'd be great if there was some kind of rail cut down to the waterfront for like a sea train or like a light rail, I guess they call it, and or a ferry. I mean, I'll be curious to see how that goes, but yeah.
Yeah. So as far as bike lanes go, I guess the vibe that I'm getting from you is that you're for it.
Oh yeah, I mean, when they work some places, but like Roby Street, they want to do it on Roby Street between North and Kennard. Like, I don't know if you see all those. They got all the trees wrapped up because people are protesting the bike lanes. They are going to tear down all the trees on what would be the west side of Roby Street to create a bike lane, cutting into the sidewalk and taking all the trees down. And, you know, if I'm a cyclist and you're going to give me the option to bike down Dublin or go down a side street like Liverpool as opposed to going up Almond Street where they seem to be pushing us on, it's like, I'm going to take Almond Street. I'm going to take Dublin Street. I'm going to take Liverpool where there's basically the danger's a lot lower. And I don't see why we're not pushing people in these more, like, because people don't do it because it's not safe. Like, I would bet that there's a higher risk of me getting hit driving a bike in the city than it is driving a motorcycle on the highway.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very dangerous. Very dangerous. And look, and to the previous caller's point, and I've said this many times in the show, if it's something that you would take advantage of or something that you would like to use, I think you're going to gravitate towards saying, yeah, sure, build bike 100%. Lanes. But if it's something 100%. that you'll never ever use, and you're of an age where your inclination will be that you won't support it, I think that's normal, right?
Well, exactly. Like you said, make it attractive, make it safe, make it make sense, and people choose it. But they're not choosing it because it's not safe. And that's just one of the reasons. But I guess it's the dividing factor that this has been one of the most divisive issues in the city for years now, and it's like, I don't know if it's some kind of illusion. I mean, I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on, but it's like, all this seems to be the most divisive thing that's been talked about for years. And I'd love to see if the city would reconsider some things instead of just pushing it down our throat and doubling down and not reconsidering. Like in my neighborhood, we got a notification that we're going to put a three-way stop on a hill street near my house. And I called the guy. I was like, listen, man, I saw all these accidents on my hill. If you do this, you're going to see accidents. I guarantee you. Anyways, and the guy called back and it was like he actually was interested and curious because he's like, hey, listen, we just put these things out. We solicit feedback, and then we kind of adjust our plan if we need to. And that's what he told me, and I think that's what they're doing. But, they seem to just put it out there. They put them up, and there's no, I'd love to see if they actually collected data on usership and say, hey, okay, this one works. This one works really well. Let's put more effort into this route as opposed to this route because this one gets 0 people. This one gets 100 people a day. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Good comment. Thanks for the call, pal.
Yeah, have a good day.
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Len, hello.
Oh, good morning, Todd. Todd, just 2 quick points so you can get rid of me. I think our Prime Minister, Carney, is making a big mistake right now. Even though I'm in favor, just like he is, in making Palestinians a state, I think he should have waited until after this Friday. Because I think if he had waited, we might have gotten a better deal on the tariff thing. And now he's jeopardized that by jumping the gun because he knows that Trump is against that, about making Palestine a state. So I think he should have waited, and it would have been much better. The other thing is, on the other issue I want to make a point to, I know 2 families that raise their children from the beginning without spoiling them with cell phones and games that they can play on these machines that they buy and everything, and they limit them to how much time they use on it every day. They give them an hour every day. But this is from the beginning they raise their children that way. You can't do it later on because it's too late then, because they're exposed to it and then they're not going to give it up. So if people that have new children that are raising them from the beginning, and it's a good time to do it right now in this day of age because the way technology is going so fast, is train their children from the beginning, and then they won't have a problem later on. And you have a good day.
Okay, thanks for the call. I think that he makes a lot of sense. Once the genie's out of the bottle, if you will, and once the child gets used to having that phone and having access, then it's difficult to pull it away. For sure, I would agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. On the Trump tariff thing, look, if it's not that, it's going to be something else, right? It's good. Trump's going to use any reason that he's going to come up with another reason, whether it be recognizing Palestine as a state or not. You're dealing with somebody who's irrational, who's not reasonable, who's going to come up with any other excuse to not give us or to not broker a deal with Canada. So it's, look, I take his point. The timing is what it is, but it's not. If it's not that, it's going to be something else. You're dealing with somebody who's not rational, not reasonable at all, and you can't rely on him in any way, shape, or form. And even once a deal is brokered, who's to say that he'll honor that deal? Probably not. We already have a deal. We already have Kuzma that he's not respecting. So there you go. What's your take on that or anything else you got in your mind? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Gloria's giving us a call. Hello, Gloria.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
I got a chuckle listening to my friend Steve this morning talking about people getting personal. Mm-hmm. Did you ever listen to any of Steve's interviews when he had somebody on the hot seat as a reporter? People said to me, I know people who wouldn't be interviewed by Steve because he was too mean. I was interviewed by him several times. Of course, I'm not afraid to be interviewed by anybody. Mm-hmm. But I just want to make that point. Go back and listen to some of the interviews. And Steve talks about people getting personal. Anyway, the other point is that Steve should enlighten himself by doing as I do and watching some of the council meetings. That's all. Todd, have a great day.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Victor, hello.
Hello, Steve.
Hi,
or Todd, rather.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give some advice to Fillmore on his bike lanes. Okay. I am in favor of bike lanes in places, but they should license the bike like a car every 2 years, and then have insurance on the bike, same as a car, if you get in an accident. And so they would be paying toward the bike lane and helping along if they get in an accident.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, Victor. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Let's talk to Jim. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good. I listened to Steve Murphy this morning.
Yeah.
And I think Steve made one a comment that I totally agree with. And he mentioned that the bigger issue right now, excluding bike lanes, is obviously where is this municipal government going to go and what type of government or leadership we're going to have. So a lot of emphasis. I thought there was a meeting today, Thursday, for the council to make their decision on Moore Street, but I'm still checking on that. I'm not sure if it's today or early next week. I think they have till the 6th, don't they, or the 9th?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I'm not sure the exact day. I don't think it's today. I think it's next week. I thought it was the 6th.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say, agree with Steve on the fact that the mayor won the popular vote. And you got to remember that it was a very low turnout for HRM residents to vote for council and the mayor.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many callers that are calling in there actually did get out and vote, or are they just calling in to complain about it? But I will say that the litmus test for everything moving forward will be the Moore Street decision by council and subsequently by the province, in my view. I think what we should do now, if Mayor Fillmore, would do it, I'd be quite happy with it. And that's put a moratorium on bike lanes, period. Enough is enough. Build a bridge, get over it. Bike lanes should be on a lower priority now. The car's not going away too soon. Delivery trucks aren't going away too soon. Ambulances, fire trucks, police cars, you name it. Our streets are too small to have a lot of bike lanes on our streets and then a transit lane with it and then try to get a truck or car on it. So it's just not working. It's astronomical in the costs that are being inflicted on the taxpayer. So just, if he gets the authority to do it, put a moratorium on it, no more bike lanes, maybe down the road when we get some action on the other stuff. And let's forget about this bike lane stuff because it's going to burn itself out eventually. But just put a moratorium on it. No more bike lanes will be built in HRM.
Well, look, as far as what council decides to do on Moore Street or not, the province is going to obviously override it if they go ahead with the plans. The province is not going to allow it. Tim Houston has said as much. And
sure looks that way.
And Jim, when it comes to traffic and getting vehicles off the road, I think that to me, logically, trying to look at it logically, when you look at the sheer volume of vehicles that come across our bridges every day, that come in on the 102, that come in from whatever artery that they come in on, the volume of cars, not necessarily in the summer, but certainly during peak times, is immense. And to think that you're going to put a dent in that, even a small dent in that, with bicycle lanes, to me is just logically, I don't think that makes any sense. I think when all is said and done, bike lanes are good for those who want to use them and they have some value. But to your point, are they going to achieve the end game of getting enough vehicles off the road to make any type of substantive change or difference in Halifax and year round? Because we know the climate, we know winter, we know that these aren't going to be used for half the year anyway. So I would say that is probably, for those who say that for every bicycle that you see, you're getting a car off the road. I don't agree with that logic at all.
No, and the fact is that we're a growing city. People are going to drive their cars from out in Becky Kent and Mancini's district, outside rural districts. They're going to come to the hospital. They're going to come to sporting events.
Yeah.
They're going to come.
They're going to drive.
Going to ride on a bike. They're going to put their hockey bags on a bike and bicycle downtown. I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The day of the bike is still here. Don't get me wrong. You've got electric bikes and everything else.
Yeah.
But this city is not geared up for all the bike lanes that they want to build. So stop it. Mayor Fillmore, if you're listening, stop it and push forward with transit and push forward with affordable housing. We have winter coming. We don't want people in tents. So let's get right on where we should be. That's just my opinion today.
Okay, Jim, appreciate the call. Take care.
Yeah,
all right, 902-405-6000. Look, I think that for the most part, if we're having an honest conversation about the cycling coalition, I think most of them, not all of them, but most of them would tell you that they are recreational cyclists. That it's something they enjoy doing, that it's a hobby of theirs. And look, if I were a recreational cyclist, would I like to have a nice bike network? Of course I would. And are there some advantages to having a nice bike network? Absolutely there are. But will it fix or even dent the congestion or get cars off the road in any way, shape, or form? I would say probably not. And in particular, to Jim's point, invest in transit, to me, would be a much more effective use of your dollars if you actually want to get people out of cars. Transit and a robust transit system that you can rely on, to me, that is much bigger bang for your buck. 902-405-6000. Jeremy's a first-time caller. Hello, Jeremy.
Oh, hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. A little nervous call for my first time, but I've been listening, to you for months and weeks now about the bike lanes. And I might sound like an old fogey. I'm 60, but back in the day, before I got my first car in the late 70s and early 80s, I spent a lot of hours driving around Halifax and Dartmouth on my bike. And, of course, back then there were no bike lanes. And, a bike is technically a motor vehicle, has to obey, the same traffic laws and everything. In an ideal situation, I approve of bike lanes, but the peninsula and Halifax is not an ideal situation. And I just think they should, this is going to be controversial. I'm going to get some hit back for this, but I don't think there should be any bike lanes on the peninsula, just because there's no room. As I said, I spent a lot of time on the road. I might have been lucky that I never, got in an accident or anything. But, it's not that much different than, riding a motorcycle downtown. It is a bit more dangerous. I would never let my child, ride a bike if there were no bike lanes. But I just don't – I think the bike lanes are a bad idea. And if you want to ride your bike downtown, you should just, treat your bike like a car. And, you're taking a bit of a risk, but that's life. So that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Ken, hello.
Hello, how are you, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good. I listened to your show, and I've been listening with interest on the bike lanes. I'd like to give it a new twist. I live in Fall River, and I bought pre-pandemic, so I'm not a $1 million home. But I had to frack my well and dig deeper, and it cost me $20,000. If the city puts water out into my area, and I wish they would put a pipe across my property, and I would pay a percentage of that. And if I wanted to hook up, I would pay to hook up for the pipe that crossed my front into my house. And I would pay that gladly to have water, because it's killing us out here, the lack of water. And I think that's more important than bike lanes. If you pay $90 million for bike lanes to satisfy a few, that's a luxury. But when you don't have water or you don't have housing, I think that the city's priorities are dead wrong. And its priorities are being set by the loudest on council and the ones that have been the longest on council. Because my councillor goes along with the bike lanes, even though she knows we have problems on the water in our area. So if you want to be a bike lane or a bike driver in Halifax, I think you should be paying for it, like a previous caller said, with insurance or with a license for the bike. So just like to put my comments out like this and see what you think.
Well, Ken, look, I think that, I understand that I take your point. I really do. I think that there are a lot of places that could require investment, including, like you said, water and sewer infrastructure. Certainly transit. People in Fall River, if you want people to commute from Fall River, then a reliable bus service or transit service would be a much better use of that money than building a connected bike lane to Fall River. I would say that it logically makes sense, Ken. I don't want to be totally negative when it comes to bike lanes. I get that it's nice to have, and if you're a bicyclist, there are advantages to it, and I understand that it appeals to young people, and that in an ideal world, we would have a nice connected bike lane system. But to your point, is it a priority? Should it be a priority? I would say that probably at this point it's a luxury more than a priority. I would agree with you.
I would agree, too, that transit should be much higher up than bicycle lanes for the few.
Okay, Ken. Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Look, it logically it makes sense to me that if I'm on council and I'm looking at our transit system and I'm looking at all the challenges that go along with it and not reliable and not having enough people working, not being properly staffed, all of those things, for all of those reasons, that would be my priority, much, much higher than a bike lane. To me, that should be much more controversial than bike lanes in this city. The fact that we have a transit system that is not reliable, it is not. You ask anybody who relies on it, and they will tell you that it is not something that they can count on. And that impacts people's lives in a massive way. I mean, how many more people would use the bus if it were reliable? And everybody put up their hands, and there's a lot of people putting up their hands right now. 902-456-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Shelley, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Good, good. This is my first time calling, but I just wanted to pass this by the gentleman who was saying about bikers should have insurance, license, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Here's an incident about a month ago. My son was driving along. He drives a Tucson, not that it matters, but anyway, a biker was, an e-biker was on the sidewalk driving towards them, towards traffic, lost control of the bike, came off on the road and smashed into my son's Tucson. So he's now with $7,000 worth of damage. Now, this was caught on dash cam for the guy behind, and so everything has been videotaped, but it doesn't matter. He's still on the hook for this damage. Mm. So he has to go through his insurance, but then he also has to pay the deductible, mm-hmm. which right at the moment he's really not in the position to do because he's had other, things he's had to deal with lately. So right. What's your thought on that?
Well, yeah, it's a good. It speaks to the point that many have made that people, and in particular these e-bikes, which are basically motorized vehicles, what they are.
Exactly.
Why are they not? Why? Where is the enforcement, and what type of rules are applicable to them? Because it appears as though there are no rules right now, because they certainly, and if there are, then they're not being enforced, because I see them in and out of traffic, darting in and out of traffic all the time.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, first of all, she was driving on the sidewalk, which I think is illegal, is it not?
Yeah, well, I think it is, but to the point, who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, like I say, $7,000 worth of damage. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of dents in his rear passenger door and a huge, bigger than a head dent in over the rear tire and, cracks.
And his insurance will go up, his premiums will go up at renewal because of it?
Well, hopefully it'll go under, PLPD. I don't know. Well, but, will it go up? This is another thing. Yeah. And, the insurance is telling him, because he did get the girl's name and number and everything. But I mean, even if you go to small claims court, what are the odds that you're going to get payment?
Well, Shelley, I suppose some people listening right now might say that, this is the reason why we need bike lanes.
Yes. Anyway, I won't take any more of your time. I just wanted to sort of put that out there and let people know that, it might not happen a lot, but it happens, and you're on the hook for it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks for the call. Yeah. Take care. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. I want to preface the start of this conversation to let everybody know that I bike about 150 kilometers a week. However, I'm not really in favor of the bike lanes at all. I think that similar to a number of the other callers today, having bikers that register their bike with the Department of Motor Vehicles and have insurance if they want to be on the road. I think your caller prior to me was a great example that, there's risks involved with being on the road. And I truly think Halifax and Council have to start sort of waking up and living within their means. The budget's not that big. There should be a lot of other major priorities that should be taken care of. I've been listening to your show for quite some time, and I would say the vast majority of the callers, completely anecdotal evidence, would would be not in favor of the bike lanes. But I also sort of curious, like, at what point in time did I bike rails to trails quite a bit in St. Margaret's Bay. It's a lovely trails where, pedestrians and bicyclists and even, motorcycles and four-wheelers all sort of coexist. I guess my question would be, at what point in time did sidewalks, completely sort of get abandoned by bicyclists, and why did those rules change? I'm not exactly sure of the history there. But, what is wrong with our sidewalks that we have? We've got a great sidewalk network. Why can't bicyclists go on the sidewalks with pedestrians? If we were a city that had a massive surplus every single year and we didn't know what to do with all of our money, well, sure, maybe bicycle lanes and the big expense could get on board. I could get on board with that, but, the dollars just aren't adding up. So maybe Halifax could potentially implement something where bicyclists could pay a fee and, take the totality of those fees and invest in your bike lanes with those dollars. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. I don't know what people think of that.
So, Dave, you're suggesting that a portion of the sidewalk should be used by bicyclists? Is that what you're suggesting?
I can't see why not. I mean, Again, I'm on rails to trails in St. Margaret's Bay. When a bicyclist comes up to a pedestrian, they slow down and sort of move to the left and say, on your left. And, people coexist there. Yeah. I'm not exactly so sure why that can't happen, in downtown Halifax. There's some sidewalks that are wider than others, but that infrastructure is already there. So what's wrong with it? The sidewalks are already getting, sometimes plowed and shoveled, but winter bicycling, let's not even get into that. But for the most part, during the spring, summer, and fall, that infrastructure is already there. And the only other point that I would make, at some point in time, someone at the City of Halifax should be held accountable for these decisions that have been made. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but a traffic study or something at some point in time should have been done prior to all this bike lane infrastructure to say, okay, what's the number of cars on the road now? Let's install the bike lanes. What has that done? And somebody should be held accountable to see whether, it was, because at some point in time it was somebody's brainchild. Let's just get to the brass tacks of it. Did this work or did it not? And if it's not working, we are not in the financial position to double down on this stuff and continue to, write the checks. Everybody's paying a lot of taxes. We all know the affordability stuff. Things are getting tighter and tighter. Well, let's get the priorities straight.
Good comment, Dave. I think you make some good points. Thanks for the call, pal.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Phil, quickly, if you can, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Nick Gold signs, and Justin Fields will be back. Just to touch real quick, and for people, FYI, CBC just reported there the last couple of days about this exact topic of the bike lanes. Calgary and Edmonton are defuncting bike lanes in strategic areas, and the transport minister and the premier, just like here, what's going on, has already been going on for the past almost 10 years. So people should really start looking at, and I'm talking about the politicians, maybe they could get some insight as to how Edmonton and Calgary are handling this bike lane conundrum, we'll call it.
Yeah, I saw the story, actually. Phil, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, again, just paraphrasing the story, but in some parts of Edmonton and Calgary, I believe that they're tearing up bike lanes that have been existing, were built about 10 years ago because of they need the room for vehicle traffic and for cars, road infrastructure. Again, just going off memory from reading the story earlier in the week. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, it's the last Thursday of the month. By tradition, we have Dr. Jeff Goodall on the show, veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. And we take your calls, pet-related. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. If you have a question about your pet, health or behavioral, give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Dr. Jeff Goodall, thanks for joining us as always.
Hey, thanks for having me on as always. Hope everything's good and everybody out there is having a decent day. Stay cool.
For sure. What would you like to pass along, impart some wisdom before we get into this?
Well, wisdom, I don't know. I've noticed on Facebook a lot of scuttlebutt on Librela and Silencia, but mostly Librela. Librela is a monoclonal antibody injection. It was released, I think, 4 years ago now. It was like in Europe first, and then it rolled over to Canada and the U.S. and other countries. And it is a therapeutic, and there's a version for cats, but I'll just talk about Librela for dogs. That is a blocking injection given subcutaneously monthly to block the pain stimulation from certain conditions. I read recently that it's even being used by some veterinary dentists. But there are some, with any new medication that's only 4 or 5 years out there, even with good initial research, as it starts getting used, things start popping up. And so I've noticed it in the exam room with a couple of cases where clients are like, hey, even though this medication, this option is working for my pet, I see all this stuff online. What am I going to do? So just talking about osteoarthritis, the most important thing to remember about osteoarthritis, there's an acute and then there's the chronic treatment options, right? Acutely, it's typically a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. People think of those as painkillers. They're really just anti-inflammatories, and by reducing the inflammation, they reduce pain stimulation. And there's a whole bunch of options there. And I'll submit that one of them, I think it's Profen, which is Rimadyl. When it first came out 20 years ago, very shortly after its release, 4 or 5 years, everybody started reporting adverse events and what have you. The drug is still out there because it does work very well. But like any non-steroidal, we have to watch liver and kidney function pretty closely, just like with people. Then there's other options in the acute and chronic management, polysulfonated glycosaminoglycans and supplements with omega fatty acids, glucosamine, chondroitin, sometimes fentanyl and fentanyl patches and things like that might be an option. I'm not a huge fan. And then in chronic treatment, and this is where I guess I'm going, is if you have a question about your pet's therapeutics, whatever the medication, whatever the condition, get a second opinion. If you're not, you have a great relationship with your vet, or you wouldn't be going to him or her. But getting a second opinion is a win-win for everybody. Having said that, remember specifically with osteoarthritis, it isn't just a one-shot-fits-all disorder. I mean, people with osteoarthritis, okay, they're not paying out of pocket for the visits, but they know that typically repeated visits are going to be needed. Therapy and treatment options like physiotherapy and medications and exercise are going to be tailored with every visit, and you're going to need repeated visits. And clients, because I'm sensitive to the fact that, every time you come in, there is a charge. But, clients kind of want that one-shot magic bullet. And in osteoarthritis, I don't think that's going to exist. But things to think about if your animal is experiencing osteoarthritis, options other than therapeutics, acupuncture, physiotherapy, magnetic, cold laser, magnetic therapy, things like that. So, but coming back to what started this, Librela is a monoclonal antibody that basically latches on to, stops pain signals going into the spinal cord. That's really what it does. In cats, it may be associated, and I have seen it, with hair loss at the site of injection. So we just stop it, and we basically know, okay, that's not an option. We're going to have to use other things. In dogs, I'm seeing one case where it caused increased what's called oh my gosh, it went out of my head. Anyway, nocturnal peeing, if you will, while the animal's relaxing, they just urinate on themselves. That does seem to be an unusual but nonetheless reported effect. So again, none of these medications, whatever it is, even meloxicam, which is an anti-inflammatory used in osteoarthritis, these things aren't benign. Some may be a little less benign or more benign than others. But in the end, let's watch what's going on Facebook with a bit of a jaded eye. because 18 million doses of this drug have been given, or this therapeutic have been given. And like any new drug, using Rimadyl as an example years ago, we're going to see symptoms, signs that may or may not be related. And for example, I saw one post talking about this type of osteoarthritis that exists in people and is not existent, at least as far as we know now, in dogs. So, for example, people are starting to draw their own conclusions, doing their own research, which is great. But if that type of osteoarthritis hasn't been reported in pets yet, it's a kind of a hard reach. Anyway, that's a very long intro, and I appreciate you giving me the time to address it. I try to stay current, and it's important for the show, and it's important for me in practice to stay current on new things. And this is one that I'm going to be watching really closely.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. If you've got a question for Dr. Jeff, give us a call, 902-405-6000. Pet related, of course, health or behavior. 902-405-6000. We'll get some open lines for you. Again, 902-405-6000. Did I hear you say acupuncture for pet? I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think we best forget all these other options are out there. And again, coming back to people with osteoarthritis or bone-related, joint-related issues, people know of it, or people. It's out there. There are board-certified veterinary acupuncturists out there. There's Chinese herbal medicine. I've tried some of these things with my own pets or other clients. My own pet, for example, the last one, I just lost my other dog recently too, but the one before that, I took her to a physiotherapist who used underwater treadmill therapy. So in other words, the water buoys up the dog on the treadmill so that she can move a little more easily and get, exercise is important to when it comes, I'm talking specifically for osteoarthritis, moderate exercise is imperative. Acupuncture, I think if my memory's right, it's like a session a week or 2 sessions a week to start. And then over time, you go to monthly maintenance. Because again, I recognize these things cost money, and veterinary medicine isn't necessarily inexpensive, but it's a mistake in our profession and a mistaken expectation on the part of our owners and clients to expect one shot solves all. There are so many options for alternatives out there. And I mean, just thinking about supplements like polysulfonated glycosaminoglycans, Triacta, which is a really pure glucosamine chondroitin, and something called MSM or methylsulfonomethane. There's also methane, and there's also New Zealand green lip mussel, another potent natural supplement anti-inflammatory. And with my last dog, as she got older, we had to start using various things. Dasaquin is a great supplement treat. Flexidin is another one. These are treats made by drug companies, so they're getting third-party tested. The problem with a lot of supplements, and I'm not anti-pet store products, but even in Lawton's and Shoppers Drug Mart, some of these supplements that are there are actually not guaranteed to have the supplement at the level they say on the label, because there's no requirement that they prove that all the time. Whereas if a supplement is made by, give me a drug company, Bayer, for humans, then that supplement is being made to the same standard as a medication with third-party testing. And basically third-party testing is you send the medication or supplement out to a third party who's completely independent of you to verify its level of therapeutics. So that's a very long answer. I apologize.
No problem at all. 902-405-6000. Don's giving us a call. Hello, Don.
Hello, guys. Just the question for Dr. Jeff is this. We've just moved. Our previous house, the cat was enjoyed ripping apart the cloth couch. We're thinking about getting another one in the new apartment, and we're almost expecting the same result. He's a 6-year-old neutered male, and I'm wondering if there's anything out on the market that we could, spray on, or some sort of any kind of intervention we might want to try to think about before we purchase the unit, the furniture. Yeah.
So, sorry, just I got a text message that was talking. Basically, first things first, can you trim the cat's nails?
Pardon me?
Can you trim your cat's nails?
I don't personally. I'm not brave enough to do that, but my wife and child can sometimes, over a couple sessions, they can get it trimmed down. Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so So the first things first is let's reduce the toes as much as we can. Secondly, what we did in our furniture now, because we have cats too, is I use double-sided sticky tape, which is available on Amazon. The double-sided sticky tape is absolutely perfect to dissuade cats from wanting to scratch things on the sides and back of your furniture. There's another thing. We used a plastic film sheet, so it wasn't just like a strip of tape. It was oh my gosh, I think it was 2x2, and stuck that in the back of our chairs, and that pretty quickly stopped them. But there's a website called Fundamentally Feline, all one word, fundamentallyfeline.com, and she's a crazy cat lady and vet, and all in a good way. And there's stuff in there about getting your cat in a carrier. There's stuff about educating yourself on how to trim toes, and some fundamental information, hence the name of the website, on how to give medication or what have you. But in the end, it's a complicated question. You almost have to train your cat to a scratching post as well. And I believe she has videos on there. I'm just actually looking on the website right now. Yeah, there's videos on how to encourage your cat to use a scratching post and dissuade them. But again, with my cats, I used to put catnip on their scratching post, use the double-sided sticky tape, the plastic film. If you're out of the house and things are happening on like the surface you sit on, you can always put tinfoil on there. I know it sounds crazy and it's a bit of a waste, but if a cat jumps on tinfoil, you want to put a video camera or trail cam up. And I'm not being mean, but it is pretty entertaining to watch the response they give, because they hit it and then they're like, I'm thinking of swear words in my head, but basically they just take off and they're not going near there again. We also had to put some sticky tape on the upper part of the top of the back of the couch, if you will. And it pretty much stopped it. Like and there's another thing, soft paws. I almost forgot that. Soft paws, basically you trim your cat's nails, and then they're little taps you glue on their toes. I think if you go to my website, one of my pets is on there, Harvey, with her soft paws on. They're just little pink plastic caps. They come in different colors. Of course, Harvey's particular to pink. And we glued those on, and they last. It depends on the cat. My original first cat, Sunny, I don't think the soft paw cap stayed on her toes more than 2 or 3 weeks. And other cats, because their nails grow slower or more slowly, the cap stayed on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're super safe. And the cats, they tolerate them. So there's a lot to think about there. Go to the fundamentally-feline.com. It's also on the Sunnyview links page. So if you go to Sunnyview-vet.com, or just Google Sunnyview, go to the links page, and you'll see it. I think it's the top of the, the top of the feline links page, if you will. And there you go, my friend. Long answer. Apologize.
No, that's great. I'll look all that stuff up. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Don. Take care. 902-456-1000. That's the way to reach us. For Ask Vet Signal, we'll talk to Jeff Goodall and give us a buzz. We got open line for you. 902-456-1000. Ask Vet continues when we come back.
Axe.
All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment. We'll talk to Jeff Goodall, runs Centerview Animal Care Center in Bedford. Give us a buzz if you have a pet-related question. 902-405-6000. Roya, hello.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I have a dog. Like, we've only ever had one dog at a time over, our lives, I guess. So we have a 2-year-old dog currently, and she's very sweet, and we're considering getting a second dog who would be like a puppy. And we're just wondering, is there something that we may not be looking or seeing in the big picture of things with introducing them, and something maybe we're not thinking about?
Not a simple question, because I've never met the dog. I would probably reach out. Okay, I would reach out to someone who knows. Like, if you took your current puppy to a trainer for training, reach out to him or her and get their opinion, because they might remember your dog from the training sessions. I'd also email your veterinarian and ask his or her opinion, because they get to know your dog more than I could just blanket recommending things with no knowledge. I mean, I'm certain you could go online and look for introducing one dog to another, and then when you read those kind of things, intuit what you're seeing in your own pet. It's not really an easy question to answer per se, at all, actually. I'm trying to think of anything I could do to be helpful. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I mean, in theory, if you're worried about for the listening audience, if your dog is nervous, obviously your dog has inter-dog aggression, and I know yours doesn't, but for the listening audience, if your dog has inter-dog aggression issues, then you really need to plan things out and talk to a behaviorist and work with him or her to help your dog you can't remove a behavior. It's like asking somebody with car ride anxiety to just get over it and jump in the car right away. You have to, use strategies to help that dog along. There are pheromones, there are natural anti-anxietal supplements and things like that for dogs. But in your puppy situation, at 2 years old, that's probably an ideal time to introduce a new dog to the home anyway. And if it's a puppy, it'll probably go just fine, although recognize that, your current dog may be, I wouldn't use the word aggressive, but assertive with the puppy, maybe even pushing it over on its back a few times and growling lightly at it and what have you, because that's what mom dogs do with their puppies when they're babies anyway, to correct behavior that they don't appreciate. I think you'll be just fine, but I really, really, really recommend you reach out. You don't need an appointment, just email your vet, and especially if the support team know your pet too, anybody will be able to start going, what's your dog's name, by the way?
Her name is Olive.
Olive, yeah. People will go, oh my God, Olive, I don't see any problem with that. We've seen her interact in the waiting area with other dogs, that kind of stuff. You need somebody who knows your dog. And that's the way I'd look at that.
Yeah, it's funny because we did actually just have Olive at her appointment to be groomed, and our groomer is actually a family friend too, which is a nice bonus. And she thinks it's a good idea, and like you said, now would be the time instead of waiting till she's too old to really appreciate the energy of a puppy. So yeah, I think maybe it is a good idea, but I appreciate your help.
No, I appreciate the question. I just wish I could be more definitive. That's kind of the job, but there you go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roya. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for our Ask the Vet segment. We'll talk to Jeff Goodall, veterinarian at Red Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. If you have a pet-related question, we've got the vet for another half hour. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet continues when we come back.
Facts.
It's our Ask the Vet segment. We'll talk to Jeff Goodall, veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford, taking your calls, pet-related, of course, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us if you'd like to chat with Dr. Jeff. If you've got a question about your pet, health or behavioral, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Adam, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
I've got a Burmese mountain dog. He's about 10 months old. He's about quarter with a quarter mix of the standard poodle. I'm just calling in regards that he just does not like to eat that much. So we got him on Purina Pro Plan, mixed with Purina wet food, and you got to mix it in really good so all the kibble has a little bit of wetness for him to even entertain eating it. And sometimes he won't even eat that. I just wonder, is there any suggestions for that type of breed that I should be trying?
Okay, so really nothing specific for Bernese Mountain Dogs, to be honest. I mean, there's all this debate. I went through it with my own dog. If you're only feeding processed kibbles and canned food, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but you might want to start considering some home cook, like even just adding in cooked or frozen peas and carrots as a vegetable with lots of vitamins, minerals, and protein. That may intrigue him enough to eat. I had a client the other day say that the dog only eats steamed broccoli. Well, do that. if you're going to break down and start using like a protein topper like chicken or beef, avoid pork like the plague, but you can always double boil chicken or ground up lean hamburger, boil it, run it at a boil, decant that water off, boil it again, and you can use a little bit of that, and I do mean a little, mixed in with the kibble food. A boiled egg isn't a bad idea. Some say remove the yolk, some don't. Nutrition is not simple, regardless of what Facebook pages with Katherine Heigl and Rob Lowe say. It's not that simple. How TV stars become nutrition experts is another debate. But anyway, you need to. It's frustrating to have a dog not eat, and I went through this. And you can even use things like a little bit of fresh pet or other diets. I'm freeze-dried, raw, and raw. If you're going to go there, you should consider talking to your vet about regular deworming. I mean, I think we, the veterinary profession and owners, have to be open that nutrition is a discussion, not necessarily with hard and fast answers. And the other thing, and I haven't asked this yet, is your dog unusually thin? Like, is it growing normally when you went to your last vet visit? Was he or she, the vet, happy with how your pet was growing? Were there any concerns?
No concerns at all. He's growing at a rapid pace, but normal pace.
Okay, so the other thing is to consider is that maybe our expectations with your pet, what's his name? Her name?
Buddy.
That's a good name. And those faces, they're just such cute little faces.
My 5-year-old named him.
Even better. I mean, that's so perfect. But if the dog is growing normally, then maybe our expectation for the volume of food is too much. In other words, the dog is eating enough and everything's okay, because remember that, and this is not a criticism of pet food companies, but a lot of the feeding recommendations on bags of dog food, cat food, any food, are overrepresented. And I won't get into why, but you might want to email your vet and say, hey, and for the listening audience, it's called MER, or Metabolic Energy Requirement Calculation. It's really simple. You can Google it, I suspect, as well. And so for you, sir, get the MER, or Metabolic Energy Requirement, for your dog. And there is one for growth versus adult versus senior. So there's 3 different ones for every stage of life. And get that. It'll give you the amount of kilocalories that are projected right now for your dog to consume. Then you compare that to what's on the bags and cans of food and do the math. But as time goes on, you're going to have to increase that as the dog grows. And then keep in mind that after you neuter him, and there's a whole debate, and I think it's a very strong indication, neuter him later, not earlier, but after you neuter him, there is a change around that time, coincidentally, of neutering, that the animal's metabolism changes, so the less food will likely be needed proportionately, like 20% or 1/5, to keep good body condition. And again, for the listening audience, Google body condition scoring. The WASEVA, World Small Animal Veterinary Association, has a great chart for cats and dogs on how to judge body condition on a score of 9. You should do that too, sir, and go from there.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Adam, good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for Ask Vet segment. Again, 902-405-6000. Donna's giving us a call. Hello, Donna.
Hi. So I have a beautiful Bernese mountain dog as well, Lexi, and she is, if you can believe it or not, she, God willing, will be 13 in September, which is really quite a feat. I know double digits often for larger dogs. It can be kind of miraculous, but she's doing really well. We just had her at the vet. My husband, has taken her. He does 10Ks with her every day. Not now, obviously, and that certainly gets turned back with heat and things like that. But she's definitely slowing down, and she's not eating as much. And I'm a nurse, a registered nurse, so I know as people get older, they tend to not need as much calorie-wise and stuff. But, she's just having more of a hard time. You see it struggling a little bit to get up from lying down in that beautiful burner, mat, the way that they lie and stuff. So I'm just wondering if there's anything we should be doing for comfort. Now, we do have a prescription from her veterinarian that we give her if we see that she's in pain. It's like a PRN thing. I don't have the name of it right now. It's just a liquid we put on her food, or a little piece of bread or something, just to get her to take it. Is there anything else that we should be considering for her comfort? And it is a PRN med, but it can be given every day, every 24 hours. I just don't want to be giving too much,
Okay, no, not enough information. For the listening audience, PRN, she means when needed, as needed. But
Yes,
basically,
right.
so you're probably using meloxicam or something similar like that, which is a liquid typically. Right. So again, we opened the show on this, and I would have a chat via email. There's no need for another visit with your vet because, as a nurse, you understand a little bit more than some, and that makes you both dangerous and effective in the exam room because remember that pain management is a Band-Aid on a symptom. It's not actually treating the problem. And, you could say, well, Jeff, my dog's 13 years old or Lexi is 13 years old. I don't know if I want to get too interventionist. But, the things to start thinking about are regular polysulfonyl glycosaminoglycan supplements or injections. That's really well known in horses and dogs. I can't comment on people. There's Pentosan. There's all these opt-ins over and above the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory you're using. Because remember, that's not an analgesic, that's an anti-inflammatory. So analgesia is the pain management fancy word we use. So you may want to consider, as I mentioned at the top of the show, alternative therapy options like acupuncture and magnetic therapy and physiotherapy. We have a vet in our practice who practices some herbal medicine and acupuncture and things like that. And it's opened my eyes again to something I've known about but not really been involved with. My own dog went to a physio. My last dog before this one went to a physiotherapist for quite a while. And then my last dog went to an osteopath to help break down some of the things that were going on. Like there's a lot of options there that I think an email to your veterinarian for his or her opinion are going to be great because, again, and I'm talking over you, but, we presume we understand our pet's pain and quality of life. But as a nurse, you'll know that some people are more tolerant than others. And, you and the other clinicians are looking at each other going, Mr. Jones should be way more painful than this. And that's because Mr. Jones has an open quote high pain tolerance. That doesn't mean that he's not suffering. That doesn't mean that his pain is not causing other organ systems to be under stress. So we focus sometimes on the joints and forget that the whole body is responding, liver inflammation, kidney inflammation. And remember, too, nonsteroidal drugs, and boy, this is a long answer, nonsteroidal drugs are not necessarily benign to the liver, kidney, and other things. So we're building our foundation on nonsteroidals isn't the only option. For example, what I opened with the monoclonal antibody, you might want to give that 3 or 4 or 5 times monthly just to kind of get your pet on a path while you open up other options like acupuncture, like other disease modifying, like Dasaquin and Cosequin and all these supplements that are really, really effective and aren't drug related. Like osteoarthritis is a layered approach, right? We've got to reduce the inflammation in the joint. Well, how do we do that? And it gets really complicated. But I would really, really recommend you you and your family start opening up options for your pet because, depending on drugs isn't always the way. Our Western medicine isn't always the way. It isn't bad, it just isn't always there.
Yeah, and we do have...
There's other pain management options, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We do have a supplement that we put on our food. It's a liquid. I forgive me, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's got all that, for the joints and everything, joint health. But so I know, just as really quickly, in terms of humans, we see people don't always verbalize their pain. They present it in different ways, and we look at the grimacing or there's certain things. So I noticed her panting a lot, and it's hot, but she's on the, she'll be laying down in the air-conditioned room. So I'm wondering, is that a sign that we should really be like, okay, she's just seems to be panting a lot more, kind of breathing, you know what I mean? No lung issues, but just, is that an indication that she's in more pain?
Well, that's a really open-ended question. Pardon me?
No,
so,
go ahead.
Google Colorado State Pet Pain Score, I think it's called.
Can I stop you right there real quick? For one quick second, we've had our Colorado State. We lived in Colorado for 20 years, so we've had our. That's great. You said Colorado. I'm very familiar with that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So to answer your question about panting, the Colorado Pet Pain Questionnaire is extremely effective, and it looks at more than, say, panting. And you're talking about grimace and all that. That might be a way for you to establish if your pet is in discomfort. And I would argue at 13. I mean, if you're a nurse, you understand people get older, they're in pain that they'll just tolerate. And I guess there's an argument to say, well, you know what, we all get painful as we get older. That's an argument that is personal and I can't comment. But, you know, there's a lot of options out there that, like I said before, email your vet and start talking to him or her and get a second opinion and start thinking about an osteopath, all those other options.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Donna. Good luck. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, 902-405-6000. We've got the vet to the top of the hour. Get some open lines for you as well. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet continues when we come back. Right, our Ask the Vet segment continues, 902-405-6000. We've got Dr. Jeff Goodall on the line. He runs the Centerview Animal Care Center in Bedford. Gets room for you as well, 902-405-6000. Here's a quick email question, then back to the phones. Lee says, I have a 15-year-old rag doll cat, still active and affectionate for the past 6 months. Her stool has been liquid, goes 4 to 5 times a day. She's on thyroid meds, which was changed to try and fix the issue, did not work. She also tried a round of antibiotics, which did seem to do nothing. She's no longer using the litter, instead going on the tile floor. Is there any suggestions we may be missing?
Wow. So 16 years old and is hyperthyroid. They've already adjusted meds. Well, that's not easy. I would email your vet and start thinking about a non-allergy or low allergen diet option, or a more digestible diet option like an enteric diet, which is a fancy word for guts, and or intestines, better word. Because your pet may be experiencing age-related inflammatory bowel disorder. I don't like the word disease. And the problem with cats and inflammatory bowel disease is typically they get mad about it because they're discomforted. And then exactly what she's describing, they start going outside the box and what have you. It could also be not that kind of disorder at all, but instead a senility problem where the cat may be losing a little bit of consciousness with respect to the understanding to use the litter box at the same time as having diseases like lymphangiectasia, and just write that down, lymphangiectasia, or I don't like the word, I'm just trying to think of a better one. There are, if they haven't already done it, repeat blood work, really thorough blood work, probably an x-ray just in case. And it's a tough one. I got to sort of think a little bit here. Also consider maybe fiber therapy. It's counterintuitive, but fiber therapy may be an option as well. I am concerned that this is a protein-losing enteropathy. It seems to be more typical in the older hyperthyroid cats. And it's usually a trial of different diets, at least initially, and then go from there. So that's a long answer because none of these questions today are simple. But there you go. That gives you something to start with. Anyway, lymphangiectasia or protein-losing enteropathy would be pretty high on my list.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Kevin, hello.
Hello. I got a question for the doctor. We have a Chihuahua, 10 years old, really lethargic, not healthy for a couple of days. We've seen it before in his lifetime, just a couple of bad days not eating and stuff like that laying around. But this went on for 3 days. We took him to the vet. They did a bunch of blood work. They determined the dog had Lyme disease. So we got some antibiotics, and he put him on a dosage of prednisone. I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, we took the dog home, and literally gave him the prednisone, and the dog, this sounds almost magical, the dog was completely normal. And completely changed, back to normal. And the next day, we could take him on long hikes again. It was like nothing happened. is it possible the antibiotic could work that fast on a diagnosis of Lyme disease?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? And yes, in my experience, there are cases that, so an animal comes in with just for the listening audience, an animal comes in, dog, not cat, with, profound pain or something really quite ill. And we test them, and Lyme disease is a pretty profound infection in many, but not all, cases. And, typically it's lameness, though it can be gastrointestinal and generalized discomfort. And I usually don't use prednisone, so I'm not criticizing. The problem here is we don't know which drug is working. But in the end, the antibiotic can have a very profound effect. The next day, it's pretty rare in our profession we see something that dramatic. But when it comes to Lyme disease and the use of doxycycline, which is the antibiotic, amoxicillin is another choice, these dogs will bounce back. And then the client's on the phone more or less like what you're doing, saying, what's going on here? Antibiotics take a while to work. And we're like, no, actually, Lyme, you basically, the diagnosis by your veterinarian team has basically been confirmed there. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
And then I would email your vet, update them with an email, and then look at long-term management options such as Lyme vaccination, some other things that you may want to consider, and something called a Quant C6 test, which will talk about the long-term implications. But yeah, the short answer is I see it all the time.
Amazing, just amazing. He is on doxycycline, so we kept him on that. We cut back the dosage on the prednisone. I just didn't think he needed it, and they recommended 5, which is double what we looked up online. We took it back to a half, and that's maybe I should have talked to the vet about that. But anyway, that's what I've done. He's doing fine. So I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you very much.
Okay, great stuff, Kevin. Glad it's worked out for you. Take care. All right, Dr. Jeff, always great, my friend. Appreciate it very much, and we'll do it again next month. I know, but listen, we appreciate it very much, and I know that we get lots of great feedback. I get lots of great emails, and it's very much appreciated. It's a great service that you do for the community and for the radio station, so thank you, sir.
Hey, you're very welcome. Everybody be kind to each other and have a great month. Talk to you next month.
All right, take care. That's Dr. Jeff Goodall, veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. And again, always appreciated and always lots of good comments and lots of great feedback from that segment. And we know that it's very, very much appreciated. Speaking of appreciation, I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always, and we appreciate you as well for listening. And we're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.